Welcome to City of Keene in Focus. Thanks so much for listening. Good morning and welcome to our next episode of City of Keene in Focus. My name is Asa Kramer and I am joined today by Court Bloomquist and Mike Kagan. Hi guys.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I didn't want to get your titles wrong. What are your titles?
I'm right now the Emergency Management Administrator, and Michael is?
I hold a couple different titles, so Plains Examiner, Floodplain Manager, and the Assistant Emergency Management Director.
Great.
Yes, I'm actually retired. I was the Public Works Director for about 30 years, so I've come back and I'm doing some work for the city manager in the emergency management world.
Awesome. Last episode, Elizabeth mentioned that she was really interested in really diving into emergency management. So today we are talking all things emergency management. We're talking about being prepared and mitigating. We're talking about what happens during an emergency, including what happens from the city's perspective and what the public should know in that situation. So yeah, let's dive into it. I am going to turn a lot of this over to you two because I'm pretty ignorant about emergency management. So I'd be really curious to get just a brief overview of the work that you two have been doing, how it affects the public, what should the public know, what should the public do, etc. So I'm going to turn a lot of this over to you two.
Oh, great. Well, thanks. I think we got about 3 hours.
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I have a tendency to dive into this particular type of work. Emergency management for the city. We're an area that's probably not seen a whole lot because hopefully that means there's not a whole lot going on. But on the other hand, we're also very important working through getting the community prepared for things that can happen in the future. So you can kind of look at emergency management in that perspective, is that we're here to be there helping to coordinate the city's response when things are not going as well or when the storm clouds have come in. But when the sun is out like it is today, our role is to work with the community businesses in helping them get prepared for those activities, whether it's helping a business or a nonprofit look at how would they continue to operate if something happened, they lost access to their building or a substantial power outage, etc. The same thing with the community, making sure residents are prepared. Right now, we're in the fall. We're coming up on our winter season in New England, particularly in New Hampshire. Who knows what's going to happen in the next hour because it could change. We focus on those areas. We kind of look at that preparedness and mitigation as we refer to it. The response, that's when something happens. And then, of course, the recovery, once everything has slowed down, bringing the community back and forth. So did I get that right, Mike?
You said it great, Court.
You were looking at some statistics about some emergency issues.
I was, and in 2023, these are the newest ones that I could find from FEMA, was more than 100 million Americans were impacted by natural disaster.
Whoa!
That's 1 in 3. 1 in 3 Americans were affected by a natural disaster in 2023. So,
wow.
And more than 3 million Americans were displaced during those natural disasters. So communities, on average, they see 25% of the businesses that are affected by the natural disaster never reopen. And 25% of the displaced residents never return to their communities.
Wow.
So that being prepared and having an emergency management program really prepares your community to recover from that and lessen those numbers because they can be so devastating. You think about, not all the business would be affected in Keene, but let's just say the eastern part of Keene, those businesses were affected and 25% of them never reopened. That would be devastating.
That would be horrible, yeah.
So, me and Court are trying to put together those pieces to make sure that we can recover quickly and that they're prepared, we're prepared. We work as a group to recover from that or be prepared for it.
As Mike talked about, I think most residents, most folks here, when you talk about, hey, what is our greatest fear for what will happen? I think flooding is typically on the forefront of most people's minds. Why? We live in a wonderful valley. We're at the bottom of that valley. So water coming down from the hills can have a devastating impact. Folks that have been around for a while, 2005 is where we saw over 40% of our downtown area in East Keene under 6 to 8 feet of water. Of course, we're susceptible to winter storms and ice storms. The last one, I think, in the region that was substantial was in '08. So those are the things that do impact us. So again, what are we doing? Well, we just recently completed our hazard mitigation plan. There's a number of plans that go along with emergency management. Hazard mitigation plan is really looking at those threats, those hazards that we are susceptible to. I mentioned flooding, that is our greatest, but there's other severe weather. You can go down the line. There's some man-made ones. We have 4 highways that come together, so there's lots of cargo and things going by, so there are potential for large transportation incidences, etc. But that plan goes through and looks at all those things. And then it steps back and looks at, well, what can we be doing to hopefully mitigate those things? Things like on flooding, raising up utilities. If people have their heaters or their hot water tanks in the basement, potentially raising those up from a residential standpoint. For businesses, it's, hey, I got a transformer right outside my business. I need that power. Raising that up a little bit to do that. So the hazard mitigation plan looks at all those kinds of things and identifies those. And those then go into things like our annual operating budget for the city or through departments through the capital program. We're working right now on our emergency notification system. Some folks know it as Code Red. This is that reverse 911 system that we're looking to have up by the end of this year, first of the new year. And what this will allow the city to do and departments to do is let the community know what's happening. If something is happening citywide, like the recent water main break and boil order that had happened out there, or if it's in a specific area, if the law enforcement is having an issue that they need to let the immediate residents know that they need to shelter in place, etc. So we're looking at having that system up and running by the 1st of January. We're really excited about that because that's going to allow us to keep people more informed.
Great. And I do just want to mention that hazard mitigation plan, as well as many preparedness resources, can be found on our website, keenanh.gov. There's a icon on the home screen. You can check that all out. I am curious, you sort of touched on this a little bit. In the hazard mitigation plan, what types of emergencies are covered in that? You had mentioned a lot of like weather-related emergencies, storm, winter weather. You had said some like transportation things. What else is covered in that plan?
Cyber. And certainly, I think a lot of folks are hearing from their own financial institutions, et cetera, about cyber issues, cyber attacks. That's been identified in our hazard mitigation plan. Not just identifying things for the city to do, because to protect our resources, we also have discussions about what the community and business should be thinking about, particularly the small businesses. We rely a lot in the region on small and medium-sized businesses, and I know they have lots to do. I mean, trying to run a small and medium business is incredibly complex and hard. People I don't think, realize that. But this is an area, certainly cybersecurity, continuing operation plans. Those are things that even those businesses need to be thinking about. And when I say continuing an operation plan, that's a plan that says, okay, if something happens, how do I keep providing my service, or how do I keep doing what I normally do? That's an important thing to have in place before something happens. So you're not running around at that time going, what do I do now? I have water up to my doorstep here. How do I take care of my clients? So the plan covers that area. We do still have radiological, believe it or not, Vermont Yankee. A lot of folks may not remember Vermont Yankee. So we have an area that deals with radiology, pandemics. That's another one. We learned a lot from the COVID period of time, but influenza, the flu comes through every year, and some years can be brutal. So it covers both the natural and those man-made events. So we've talked a lot about the preparedness side. So what do we do once things start happening? Well, we have multiple departments. We have about 14 departments with 14 different operations, right? I mean, we go everything from our library.
Yep. Library, building, health, public works, finance, human resources, human services. You got recreation, you got parks and rec, the airport, wastewater treatment, fleet. There's a ton of different departments that are all a cog in the wheel to keep not only regular operations going, but in a stressful situation like a disaster. So coordinating that in the background, if you want to lead into that. Or...
Well, see, perfect, Mike.
What a great team.
Lead into, but again, you may say all the folks probably are thinking about, how do they bring all that together? How we bring it all together is through what's called an emergency operations center. Right now, it's a place that we bring all those different departments together to coordinate, to help go look at what's happening, what are the resource demands, what are the priorities, and then focus the city's resources to moving forward and helping to restore or make safe those situations. For example, flood waters. The fire department, public works are maybe out there helping to evacuate people out of an area. But you need stuff to do that. And departments in the city have different resources. This is the place that you now bring those resources together to go at a particular issue that may be going on. Here in Keene, the department heads, the senior management team, they're fantastic. They coordinate on a day-to-day basis, but when it does come for that time when they need to focus on an event that has occurred in the community, they just pull together. Whether, again, it's the police, fire, with public works, finance, believe it or not, finance is intimately involved in all this. And they put together the plans that they need to go forward with. So when folks are out there facing these things, to understand and recognize that the city is actively involved and has a place that is coordinating all those efforts. So hopefully that makes folks a little more comfortable in understanding and realizing that, yes, the city is here for them. And we do train from time to time. We bring everybody in. We go through a little exercise just to kind of keep it on their minds. Because, again, everyone has their day-to-day activities.
Kind of moving on from there, like the recovery process, what to expect, right? Disaster happens. A lot of it is gathering information and paperwork so that we can get aid to the places that need it, right? Either that be the public assistance with recovery from roads and bridges and equipment that we use for that recovery process, to individual assistance, right? Helping homeowners get the resources that they need to be able to recover after a disaster. So having our teams ready to go to do a 24-hour assessment to say, hey, we have 40% of Keene that's damaged, half of it's underwater. You got to have those assessment teams out there ready to look at that, and then getting those numbers together in a 72-hour period. Coordinating that and getting that information and tracking that so that we can recover some of those resources from the federal government as well, if it gets escalated to that point of being declared either a state or federal disaster. We can obviously declare local, but state and federal as well comes down to numbers, right? That's why finance is so important. So people wouldn't think, well, emergency management, how does finance get involved? It's all about numbers as well. So there's a lot of different aspects to it. Maybe transition at this point into how the community gets involved.
That was my next question
All
was,
right.
so like the public, like what are the biggest takeaways that you want the public to know? Like what should they do as far as being prepared? What should they do when an emergency is actually happening? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Being prepared at home. And again, what does that mean? Everyone should have some type of sort of a small emergency kit. It should have in it things like flashlights, little battery operated lanterns, maybe a radio. I don't know if anyone remembers those things that have little dials on them, because I'm going to put a shout out to our local radio, Monadnock Radio Group. They are fantastic during events, getting information out. So having a small radio available to you that you can pick up the local radio station. Most people who live in the city, water will typically not necessarily be an issue, but it wouldn't hurt to have a case of water in there and other items that you would typically think you would need. Even talk about looking at your food pantry, because I will say in most cases when something happens, it's probably going to be 3 to 5 days before you may be able to get out to a grocery store. Keep your toilet paper. I always recommend get a couple rolls in your kit. And they should look at those kits just like they check your smoke detectors. Maybe at the beginning of winter or when we change the clocks, that's a good time to go in and just sort of check through all those sort of battery operated things to make sure the batteries aren't too old, etc. So that's important. Thinking about where would you go if you have to leave your home. Certainly, the city does have a shelter. It's our Parks and Rec building up on Washington Street. In certain circumstances, we will open that up. If you can go to a family member, to a friend, that's probably going to be better off for you. If you have a pet, don't forget about our furry family members. Make sure that you have a small bag of food there. And where would they go? Because not all places can accept it. So that's that part of that preparedness, having, okay, where are we going to go? How are we going to get there? Who do we need to notify? Those are the kinds of things that individuals should be doing and thinking about doing. Now, businesses, how are you going to communicate with your employees? How will you tell them, yeah, it's okay to come into work, or no, I need you to stay away? So businesses should also be doing that sort of preparedness. They should have their own kits prepared about how are they going to function and how they're going to operate if all of a sudden something has happened.
I don't want to steal anyone's thunder here, but I do see there's a tagline written down here. Preparedness doesn't have to be scary. It's just being ready for the unexpected. And I love that. I think that's a great way to look at it, because when there's something that happens that's unexpected, it can feel a little scary. But if you have a plan in place and you have some resources, you're going to be able to react so much faster and in such a better way.
Yeah, I'm going to give Mike credit for finding that one. That's a good one. I'm thinking about stealing and maybe putting it on our webpage there. Yes, that is part of anything. Unexpectedness is uncomfortable. If folks think about, particularly if you have children, etc., understanding what we're going to do, and if the parents are calmer on the outside, they may be freaking out on the inside, but if they're calm on the outside, that helps the children. And again, that's back to prep. If you do have children, what are you going to sort of have there? I know everyone's used to having their phones and being able to play their games there, but maybe find a Parcheesi board and put it into the kit.
Absolutely. Card games, things that you can pack along, always a great idea to throw into the bag.
As Mike talked about earlier, when we move into recovery, you're going to start moving into things like, oh, we got to work with my insurance company. We have to work with the state and the Fed. So things to also be thinking about to help that process is, having a home inventory, particularly of large, expensive items. Pictures of their condition. One of the most challenges I've had over the years when I'm dealing with FEMA. At the end of the day, because laws have been passed to say we don't want anyone cheating, so they will ask for things like, well, do you have pictures of what your furnace looked like before it? Or what did the downstairs kind of in general look like? So that's something to seriously be thinking about. And today, with phones, you can go crazy. People do a lot of selfies. So do some selfies in front of your TV. Maybe go out and take a selfie there in front of the porch area, or go down to the basement and put a hug around your hot water tank and take it there and put those away. Because if something happens, that will be the question. Gee, what was it like before the event? Because unfortunately, the federal government standard rule is they will only provide resources to bring something back to the way it was prior to the event. And I think that's important for people to be thinking about. So I always suggest to folks to go out and take photos of their stuff, make sure they know where their important paperwork is. And something to be thinking about, I know when we've gone through a number of disasters here in the city, recovery can last up to several years. And that's something I think a lot of people don't always think about. They want to get back to normal. Sometimes it will take a while. I remember after the '05, it was 3 years before we were finished with all the damage that was done as part of that particular event. So that is the other hard thing, is that people want to get back as quickly as possible to normal. That's not always possible. Things will happen as quickly as possible, and people just need to be prepared for that. And by the way, I think something else they should do is, shouldn't they take a look at their insurance policies every once in a while, Mike?
Absolutely. It's always good to give your insurance company a call. Look at the coverage that you have, look at the values that are on them, because a lot of times they don't get updated unless you request it. Obviously, the higher the value, the more the cost. So a lot of people are like, oh, I'm comfortable with where it's at, But at the same time, the cost of construction, the cost of rebuilding has gone up so much. To get that comparison to what it would cost you to rebuild your home now versus when you originally had that policy, they do a pretty good job of adjusting, and you get that bump, and then you're kind of like, well, I don't know if I could sell it for that much. And come to find out, the houses are selling for some still pretty astronomical amounts. So it's always good to check with your insurance. Shameless plug in here, being the floodplain manager. Maps are changing. It's something to look at. They're anticipating adoption or final maps to be released in 2027. They started this December of 2024 when they dropped it on us. We provided them with a lot of data. They've taken that data and revised the maps, and they're going to reissue them again for us to look at. It was supposed to be this fall, but with some government change and some other stuff, they've reissued a new date of 2027 when the final maps will be reissued, and we'll have a 30-day appeal period or new information for technical data, and then it will come back as these are the final maps. And then the city will not have to, but can choose to adopt them and continue with the program. But it's a process. So something to look at now. Take a look at the map comparison change. You may have not been in a flood hazard area, and now you are. So it's something to be aware of. There has been a lot of change. Something to think about. So when we're talking about insurance.
I think we've been talking a lot about prep. These are all things folks can kind of keep doing. I know there's always during these events, there's an interest for volunteers. People want to come and help. That's another thing that through the city's Emergency Operations Center that we talked about earlier, right? Yep. That will help coordinate those groups that come in to make sure that resources get to the people that need to get to. Hey, city manager.
Hey, I hear you guys are doing a great job talking about everything emergency related.
I know this is an exciting topic. I said I can get done in about 3 hours.
I know,
So
right?
we're doing well.
Yeah, one of the things I don't know if you've talked about yet is the emergency notification system with the state.
Yeah, we already touched on that a little bit as
Okay,
part
all right.
of
Little bit, yeah.
preparedness. I'm getting with our deputy city manager, Rebecca Landry, to talk about a little campaign
Mm-hmm.
to get people to sign up. Because that's one of the things that I don't think a lot of people understand necessarily, because cell phones have
Right.
become the thing. They
Yeah.
go with you, you get in Colorado, and then you carry your number
Mm-hmm.
forever. Those phone numbers may not be in the state's database.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people know that. So what we're going to be encouraging is you can go sign up. You can enter your cell phone number into there so that when we do get alerts that we send out, the folks can make sure that they go in and get it. And here's a hint too. If you have parents or relatives in other places, you can go to those other areas and you can sign up. That way you can find out what's going on with mom out in California or down in Florida.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. I think it's going to be really helpful. We try to communicate in a variety of ways. People don't all have social media. They're not all signed up to our email lists. And so being able to send them directly a message to their phone, I think is going to be much more effective. So I'm excited about
I am
that.
too.
Yeah, and we just went through the process to update our hazard mitigation plan. The city has done a lot of work in terms of trying to mitigate flooding. In our capital plan, we have a number of flood projects every year that we're completing, and I think that's made a difference. But you really can't upsize for a torrential downpour when it comes down so quickly and with so much volume. And so, those are the things that worry me, and making sure that we are prepared to address them. And so updating the hazard mitigation plan was a big step in being prepared. And now we got to look at implementing. And a lot of the strategies in that plan really involve partnerships with other organizations like the community kitchen, right? Because we know that during COVID, we worked with the community kitchen to provide meals to people that we were putting up in different places. When something like this happens, it just shows you how much we really rely on these systems. And certainly finding ways to strengthen our partnership with Community Kitchen for the future is something that, is important, not only for us, but for the whole region, really.
We're not just Keene, the city. We're also dealing with folks who come in to live, work, and play, but during events, they're also coming in to get their groceries, et cetera. So you're talking about partnerships, and that's one of the things we were just sort of started talking about a little bit, about if there are groups that are interested in getting together more and finding out, well, what can we do if something happens? Have them please go ahead and they give me a call. We can sit down ahead of time, have a discussion. So again, been encouraging groups and organizations to, if you have an interest, to get hold of the city, because you're right, it does take a lot of partners to recover.
So, Mike, how are you liking this role?
I've been enjoying it. It's been a great experience. I've come from a background of preparedness and to step into this role, have the opportunity to help and assist. It's been great. One thing that you always feel in your heart is you want to help out your community, right? This is just one more way that I can help the community. Coordinating with volunteers, helping businesses be prepared, helping citizens be prepared, helping department heads understand the process and how we can connect and come together. It's all about education and understanding, and I love that aspect of it. I've had a great opportunity to be a part of ICC and their When Disaster Strikes program and be a trainer and help other building departments learn how to evaluate buildings after disaster, what that process is and how to use the right forms so that you can get the right recovery money from the federal government so you don't mess that up. Right? Those are always important to check those boxes, and this is just one more aspect where I can help out my community.
I think it's a natural role for you. You still got your full-time job, but these additional duties, and they are really important when we have an emergency. I think I saw you first on Water Street when we had that. That situation turned into a much bigger situation than we thought it was going to be. I mean, typically we have a water main break, and that's not something we would broadcast out to everyone, but because this was so substantial and we had to shut down the system. So it was great to see you there. And it's wonderful that we have Court, who's been the emergency management director for so long, with us still to be able to work alongside you. And I'm excited about updating our continuation of operation plans for all of the departments. Last time we took a look at those, it was during COVID. And so now taking a look at them to make sure they're updated. We've had a lot of changes in the departments. A lot of people have retired. New faces. We have a great leadership team, and they pitch in however we need them when these situations arise. Just having this conversation about what are you going to do? What will we do if this happens, whatever this is. It can be something as small as we lost internet service one day here at the city. Now, you wouldn't think that would be a very big deal, but all of a sudden, people were like, what do we do? We can't register vehicles. We can't send emails. It was like things sort of came to a grinding halt.
And that's why the pre-planning is so important,
Yes.
having that continuity of operation. It really comes down to like, hey, we can write this out,
Yeah.
right? We could just write on a piece of paper that you have a
Right.
building permit,
Yeah.
right? Can't process it maybe electronically, but if you wrote me a check or cash, boom, we can process the permit and get them out the door. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
really getting those different types of operations going, handwriting receipts, because you don't really think about it. You're like, I need to do it this way because this is the way it's supposed to look and this is how it's tracked. But to get those pretty much a stopgap or a transition and then get back onto it once things are recovered.
Yeah.
It's a important part. And
Yeah.
thinking about it and practicing it is
Yes,
even more
it's
important.
important.
Those are the important things.
Yeah.
I mean, the city has done that. It's gone through and looked at its services and then has said, well, if I can't get into the building and we have to set up something differently, or if we lose our communications, again, what are we going to
You
do?
lose power.
Yeah, those continuity operation plans are, so where we are working through with the department heads on updating or looking at, for some of them, it's the first time they've ever sort of walked through
Right,
this
yeah.
process, so that's good.
Yeah, I really appreciated the time that both of you took to come to the department head meeting and say, all right, this is our new EOC center, and here's your seat, and here's your role, and here's what happens if we go into an emergency. And so just having those conversations, those little training sessions, I think are going to be really important for us as we move forward. Was there anything else you guys wanted to talk about?
I think we've talked about preparedness a little bit,
Yep.
what people can do, businesses can do there. We talked about our hazard mitigation and then, of course, the response phase and how the city will be performing its duties through damage assessment. Mike talked about damage assessment a little bit. And then about recovery, what kind of activities we'll be doing, again, what people can expect. Also, the importance of folks being prepared, everything from, hey, getting photos of your things in your house to having that kit that has things in it for you, your children, and don't forget about a furry family members. Got to make
Right,
sure we have
right.
things for them.
Yeah,
So
water.
I think we've covered a
Water,
lot of
drinking water.
stuff.
The other thing, managing communications during an emergency is very tough because it's happening really quickly and we can't beat social media.
Yes.
Social media has their version of a story out there long before we can get our message out. And there are some things we can talk about, and then there are some things we can't talk about. And so it's such a tough job. And Rebecca Landry and Asa both do a great job helping us get our messages out. And having one person be that contact, be that one that's getting the messages out so that you're not saying something that's slightly different from what I'm saying, or somebody's calling you or they're calling me, just having that contact person makes a lot of sense. And so Deputy City Manager Rebecca Landry is our information officer during an emergency. So she plays that role. And so we funnel information to her. And as a team, we coordinate what messages are going out when. And that's her role. She sets that up. She has all the press information and she pushes out the messages. And what's really good about that, it takes some of the pressure off the deputy and the fire chief who are trying to manage the scene. They're trying to manage what's actually going on, and it's hard for them to be able to communicate. I do think messaging is really important during emergency as
Oh,
well.
absolutely. I mean, and what's even more important is recognizing the source. If people hear things or see something on particularly social media that doesn't make sense, they should contact us. But if someone has a question or, again, something just doesn't make sense, contact us.
Right.
Because 99.9% of the time, if it doesn't make sense, it's probably not right.
Yeah, I mean, normally we have departments communicating and they're every day, they're communicating on their own social media channels, they're putting out information to the public. But when we have an emergency, it's coming out of one source, and that is the city, and that's coming from Rebecca's office. And I do think that's really important. Well, I really appreciate you guys coming and doing this.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
I think it's important to get it out that everybody has a role. All the community, family members,
Yeah.
everybody can participate in being prepared, and it doesn't have to be scary.
Yeah.
Being prepared is a good thing.
I'd love for you both to come back after we get the
ENS.
ENS system up and running, and also when we have some more information we can share about continuation of operations. So here's the trick. Some of that stuff is confidential and we can't share. But there is some information
A whole
in
lot of
there.
this we can.
We can. Sharing with the public to let them know we have a plan, I think is really helpful. And so as we progress in that work with the departments, I'd love for you to come back.
No, absolutely. Probably sometime in the early spring.
Sounds good?
All right. What do you think?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
All right.
Look forward to it.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Great. I think that was a really good discussion. I think we'll wrap up for today, and we will see you next time. Thanks for listening to City of Keene in Focus. We'll see you next time.